Here's a segment from a recent Gun Talk radio episode. You can listen to all the Gun Talk radio podcasts however you tune in, or check out guntalk.com for more. One of our friends is a fellow who was firmly involved in the firearms industry, a gun company executive, and then moved to something connected but different and a passion of his heart. Mike Sodini joins us right now from Walk the Talk America. Mike, you might just explain what the organization is and what happened with your transition to doing that.
Tom, thanks for having me. I always enjoy talking with you and your family, so thanks for having me on.
You bet.
But what Walk the Talk America is, it's an organization that was founded by people from the firearms industry that had had enough with kind of the merry-go-round of madness and decided to come together and look for innovative ways to provide help to people who are in crisis without fear of consequence or restriction. So we work to bridge the gap with the mental health community just to look for creative ways to make Earth better, to get people the help they need before we have the stage 4 crisis. When I say stage 4 crisis, that could be anything from suicide by firearm or the tragic events that happened the last couple of weeks.
Right.
And I made the transition because I'm a suicide loss survivor, and the president of my former company, Eagle Imports, took his life with a firearm. So it's always been near and dear to my heart. Mm-hmm. And when I had this chance meeting, this person asked me, who was completely gun neutral, said, how does it work when there's a mass shooting? I said, everybody blames us. We blame mental health, and nothing ever gets done. She asked one question. If you know what the problem is, how do you work with the mental health community to come up with solutions? And at the time, I couldn't think of any. Yeah. So I started Walk the Talk America.
So you said, okay, let's find solutions. So one of the things that, in my experience, and I've worked with the National Shooting Sports Foundation, and we've reached out, we do work with suicide prevention groups, but some of the mental health groups don't want to work with people in the firearms industry. Have you run into that?
I haven't yet. I do see some of the groups that kind of shy away, but I know those going into those conversations, you kind of know where those groups stand. Okay. And we're not going to see common ground. But I will tell you this. I have seen a lot of people from these groups look at the solutions that we've come up with or things that we're willing to do, and they've been impressed by that. My biggest thing is that people have a perception of the gun community, and I'm here to smash that perception.
In what way? What are those perceptions?
I think a lot of people outside of the firearms community that are, I would say, lean to the anti-gun side or maybe gun neutral think that we don't do anything, that all we care about is profit. All we do is sell and celebrate when these tragedies happen, and that's just not the truth. And coming from somebody who grew up, I didn't grow up around guns, and I wasn't a gun guy per se growing up. When I was embraced by the firearms community, I saw the opposite. And that's the perception that I'm trying to smash, is the one that everybody else out there says, hey, they don't do anything.
Well, not only do they not do anything, the one that really galls me is when they say, you guys just don't care as long as you get to play with your toys.
Exactly.
And that is just galling and insulting when we're out there trying to do things. But I will admit, we do a lot of things about gun responsibility, about gun training, about gun safety. But honestly, over the years, we probably have done very little, if anything, about suicide prevention.
Well, and I think there was this big fear of having it weaponized against us. And I do understand that and some of the narratives that were created. Mm-hmm. But it's time to kind of embrace that, because let me give you an example. Like, we lose more of our first responders, our combat vets and active duty military, than any other group. They gravitate towards the gun, the gun side of the firearms industry. So it's something that we should address.
Okay, so what have you come up with? What programs, what approaches do you have? When you go talk to these groups, you say, this is what we can do. What do you tell them?
Well, what I like to do is obviously build trust. So the first thing I do when I do talk to groups is I listen to what their issues are. I validate the pain they feel during certain times, right, during these tragic events.
Right.
Because we feel that same pain as well.
Sure.
And then I explore options or show them the different options that we have. I learned that from Dr. Christian Conti in the book Walking Through Anger, and I've used that approach with everybody that I talk to. But we have valuable space in the firearms community. We have gun counters, gun shops, firearms trainers have packets, right? We have gun manufacturers' boxes. So like one example that we do is we have a free and anonymous mental health screening flyer that we get into all these different locations. We get them into gun shops. We get them into companies like Arms Corps and High Point. They put them in their box. And it just leads to free and anonymous mental health screening. Okay. And why that's important is A, it's free, and B, it's anonymous. So you can check in on yourself without having to worry about being put on any kind of list or anything like that. And then we find ways to link people that are on our side, that are gun neutral or pro-gun, that could get people the help they need in crisis without that fear of consequence or walking for the rest of your life with a scarlet A on your chest.
Well, and also, a lot of folks on the gun side are thinking, yeah, but if I go try to find, some help for this, I could end up being a prohibited person and not be able to even own a gun. So they don't go seek help.
And that's when it gets to stage 4. And that's why it's important to get the proper information passed and have these type of programs. Like one of the programs we have, Tom, is that we bring in mental health professionals to get continuing education credits to our cultural competence guns and mental health course. For yourself, it would be very boring class, right? But for many that are outside of the gun community, they come through this and it's an eye-opener. And plus, they have an incentive to take the course, and then they kind of understand where we're coming from as gun culture.
Well, and would it be fair to say that a lot of the folks who are not in the gun world, they don't even know what we are already doing in terms of gun safety, in terms of what it takes to buy a gun, and all the rest of it? They're kind of working from a vacuum.
Exactly. And this is why it's important to bridge that gap with not only just the mental health community, but everybody outside of it. Because what you want to do is educate them. You also want them to understand the process. We can't come up with solutions to maybe stop these tragedies, to get upstream, to prevent the unpredictable, unless we work together and we talk things out. So the average person needs to understand what people in the firearms community go through when they purchase their weapons, the difference between, it's all the same talking points, right? The difference between semi-automatic and automatic, why ARs are an issue, why registries are an issue. These are things that we can talk about. And when you link together and you kind of discuss these things and you build trust within a community, you can take that and, you can get them to, when I say them, I hate saying that because it just sounds like we're just on two sides of the room, but right. We've gotten the mental health community on our side to shoot down certain laws, and that's something I'm very proud of, or come out against certain firearms laws because they're educated. HR 127 is a perfect example of that. There's so much about HR 127 that's stigmatizing to mental health.
Oh, sure.
And that every single mental health organization, when they see how that bill reads, they're going to come out of their chairs. It's whether or not they're going to see it. And that's what I love about Walk Talk America is we've developed the relationships with the mental health professionals where we can float that in front of them and say, this doesn't really jive with everything that you've told me about adding fuel to the fire of the stigma of mental health. They're
being told this is just a gun control bill, and they're going, well, I have no problem with that. And then they start digging into it and say, well, wait a minute, if you buy a gun now, you're going to have to submit to psychological or psychiatric test, and so will the members of your family. And I'm sure they're reacting the same way we are, going, what? Stop, what?
Exactly, because everybody on the mental health side does usually understand. I guess, I'm not saying everyone, but most of them will understand that the only future predictor of violence is previous violence, not mental health diagnosis. And that's important to remember.
How can people help you? How can they find out more about Walk the Talk America?
Well, obviously, money is a huge issue. I sold my company a couple years ago to do this full time, but we have no salaried employees. Everybody does it for the love of the game. And we do it just because we want to make Earth better. They can find us at WTTA.org or go to WalkTheTalkAmerica.org or on social media at WalkTheTalkUS. And if anybody has any questions, they can contact us through our site. We'd love to answer them, but we do need the support of the firearms industry. It is crucial that we get that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michael, I just cannot thank you enough for what you're doing. The commitment you've made with your life is making a difference to people in their lives. It's well done. Well done.
Well, thank you for the support, sir. I truly appreciate everything you've done.
You bet. You take care. Michael Sodini, Walk the Talk America. It's walkthetalkamerica.org. If you know someone who might be in crisis, go take a look at this. There are resources there. We, the firearms community, needs to be a part of this solution. It's the right thing to do, and it's the smart thing to do, and it can actually be both of those at the same time.